Hey, thanks for stopping by real quick for an early pre-show show. Tonight is TC and Friends Monday Night Musings. I've got attorney Tom Gallagher coming on here at 7:30 sharp Monday night, November 21st. But I wanted to do this quick, almost drive time dialectic, but I'm not driving, but it is still a dialectic. I wanted to do this quick and I wanted to put it out there because I want people to really be thinking about this. There's a lot of talk right now with the apparent win of the House and the Senate at the federal state level by Republicans that we are going to be seeing a uptick in um, uh, moves to codify marriage at the federal level, which would then push that legislation off onto the states if they have their way. And this like if you're a conservative Christian, this sounds great, right? You're over here going, that sounds superb, TC. What's your freaking problem? Why would you have an issue with that? Um, my concern, I'm sharing something here, guys. Sorry about that. Here we go. My concern with that is ultimately who gets to define marriage and why do they get to define it? And really, where should the definition of marriage fall and the protection of marriage fall? And I'm here to tell you, and I'm thinking about bringing somebody on to have a more in depth conversation about this. But from my perspective, as a paleocon, paleo libertarian, Mises caucus level libertarian, for me, marriage should only be defined by individual communities. Now, if that's your church, your synagogue, your mosque, your steakhouse, and for those of you who are wondering, a steakhouse is not a place that you go. It's where the LDS, the Mormons, meet. They meet at a steakhouse. So if it's your steakhouse, if it's your atheistic, non-religious gathering, if you choose to define marriage a particular way, that is strictly between you and your community. Period. There should not be a legislative uh, oversight of marriage. Save this. I don't think children should be getting married to adults. Okay, I just shouldn't be happening. Now, ask yourself if conservatives who are on your side can rush in and define marriage as between one man and one woman and say it's on a religious playing field, then should the state at any of our levels, at the federal state level, the state level, the county state level, the city state level, uh, if if marriage is your purview, or you see it as a purview of any of the state levels, then you need to also be okay with losing control of power and then having somebody else come in and define marriage the way they want it defined and forcing that on you. There should be no licensure. Uh, there should be no state oversight of marriage. There again, outside of protecting children from being married off to pervs. Um, but other than that, there should be no state involvement in marriage at all. Period. End of discussion. And I'm open to having my mind changed on this in a future conversation. I'd love to have somebody on to have this conversation on TC and Friends Monday Night Musings. But I believe it's an incredibly dangerous perspective for us to be looking at all of the news that's kind of coming in now about marriage and how we define marriage. Who gets to define marriage? Who gets to protect marriage? Who gets to write the legislation that protects it or defines it? And on and on and on. This is why the state should have no power save national defense and to enforce treason laws and the devaluing of the American monetary system. Which, if the state were doing what it was supposed to do when it comes to the devaluing of the American monetary system, they would have tried and convicted everybody involved in removing us from the gold standard and putting us on a fiat currency. So do we really trust the people who ruined the gold standard for us to also now keep and defend marriage and make it sacred? Christian or not, conservative or not, you need to be asking yourself these really hard questions. Um, Tonight, I'm going to be sitting down here once again in about 15 minutes with Tom Gallagher. He's an attorney here in Minnesota. And we're going to be talking about his conservatism, his political activism, but in particular, we're going to be talking about his conservative activism and how it relates to the legalization of marijuana. Many of you might think you know where I'm going to fall on this. Some of you might think you know where I'm going to fall on this as far as for or against the legalization of marijuana. I could upset or surprise a few of you one way or another. But I think that this conversation that I'm going to be having with Tom here in about 14 minutes is going to be really good and going to actually be incredibly helpful for everyone. And I would encourage you guys to tune in. I'm going to be putting it here in the chat for people who haven't gotten notification. That is the link right there is the link to tonight's show with Tom. I also want to remind everyone that I am doing a 15% donation match for my friend Dana Stevens and her Give, Send, Go fundraiser. And so if you buy merchandise from me between now and the end of January, I will match up to 15%. I will give up to 15% of my proceeds from merchandise, Subscribe Star, as well as my YouTube earnings. Between now and January, I will give that 15% to Dana to support her in her Give, Send, Go. And anyone who gives directly to Dana through her Give, Send, Go up to $100 or more, or I shouldn't say anybody who gives $100 or more will get a 15% credit for anything of my merchandise. And I shipped off my first $15 credit award to some people today already. So ask yourselves, who do we want defining marriage? Whose responsibility is it to define marriage? Whose responsibility is it to keep and defend marriage and keep it sacred? And do we really want the state issuing a license for something such as marriage? Do we really want that? And why is it important if you say, yes, we do want that? And if you say, no, we do not want that, then also, why is that important? So, folks, make sure you're tuning in here in about 12 minutes to take part in the conversation with Tom and I. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. And so, until a little bit later, my friends, sic semper tyrannis.